I said, the nidus of it was my family and several other people, and with time, we evolved into a very cohesive, very dedicated, as were all the Panther chapters, a collective of persons who worked 24/7 around the clock to try to bring into being a world which we felt would be better. And there's a whole lot we could say about that. But the first campaign we attempted to, well, we did launch here in Berkeley. It was a campaign for community controlled police. And we had no idea that this thing was going to become what it became, because it became a maelstrom in Berkeley politics. In order to get an initiative on the ballot, we had to collect signatures, and we had to collect a lot of signatures, and I don't remember how many signatures we had to collect, but thousands, and we did it essentially with a small cadre of people with assistance from other progressive organizations in Berkeley, collecting names on a petition, and we broke down neighborhoods very systematically. We had them gridded off. We went door to door to door to door. That's exactly how we worked. That's how we all worked in those days. You know, we didn't have internet. We didn't have social media. Your contact with people was face to face. You engaged them on the street. You engaged them at home. You engaged them where they were. I think some of that is lacking in the way organizations happening today. You know, because that personal contact means a lot. Not to minimize how strong and powerful the internet can be. So we actually, through very dogged, day-to-day, walking, we collected enough signatures to put this sucker on the ballot. I think we were surprised we even did it. And then all political hell broke out in Berkeley, California, because this issue became the centerpiece for a lot of Berkeley politics that took place within the next year and a half. And there is much that could be said about that campaign. The concept of this community control police proposal that we had was, number one, that all police officers would have to live in the neighborhoods that they serve. This has some very obvious benefits. Obviously, number one, they live in a neighborhood, they get to know that neighborhood, they get to understand people, become part of that neighborhood. Number two, it's hard to brutalize your neighbors, right? When the neighbors are around you. Number three, it's hard to get away with brutality when you got your neighbors all around you. So it served a three-point purpose, but that was a big issue. We took Berkeley and divided it into three separate neighborhoods. West Berkeley, which at that time was the poor side of town. Like I say, you wouldn't know that now, but it was the poor side of town. Southwest of Berkeley was largely black. And that history of black presence in Berkeley is a very important history in Berkeley. Northwest Berkeley was a little more mixed, more white, a little more working class. So we had flats, we had Central Berkeley, which included the campus area and the business area, and then we had the affluent hills, which was mostly white and mostly very conservative. And we proposed having separate police departments in each of these three areas, which would be controlled and run by elected community commissions, and there would be an overlying central body with representatives from each of these three different sub-departments to coordinate citywide. It was a very, very controversial issue. And it provoked intense debate and intense political maneuvering for the next year and a half. The Berkeley City Council at that time was predominantly a conservative council, despite Berkeley being a very progressive, in many ways, city. Berkeley, in many ways, I should say, was very ripe for this idea, especially in the student neighborhood and in the black community, where police brutality was not unknown. And in the student neighborhood, they had gone through the free speech movement in '64. They'd gone through the many anti-Vietnam movements through the '60s. They had People's Park, much of which was frequently met with intense, violent repression on the part of the police, number one, and the Alameda County Sheriffs were even worse. We used to call them the blue meanies, and they were blue and they were mean. But the student area was very ripe for this idea of community-controlled police. I could spend a long time talking about how the politics in Berkeley kind of tried to incorporate this while trying also to deal with the immensity of it and create a slate of candidates for city council which would be progressive, embracing community control of police. It was a very intense reality, which is hard to describe in a few words. We had strong support on the community control of police side. Ron Dellums, who had been a city councilman and was at that time congressperson for Berkeley, a very fine politician, I have to say, one of the best in our history, strongly came out in support of community control of police, which went a long way. We had members of the criminology department, Cal, who came out in support, some of whom actively worked on the campaign. But there was a lot of opposition to it, tremendous opposition. We got enough signatures to get her on the ballot. It was supposed to be on the November 1970 ballot, but the city council, which was predominantly a conservative council at that time, moved it to April of 71 in order to allow them more time to organize against it, mobilize more conservative presence, and it's too much for me to say in a short period of time. There was a coalition which formed called the April Coalition. April when the election was going to be taking place. This came out of a lot of difficult work between a number of progressive Berkeley, mostly white organizations to come up with a unified slate of candidates to run for city council. They formed a coalition with a group called the Black Caucus, which was a group of black businessmen and black local political leaders, and between the two of them, they mounted a slate of 4 candidates, 2 black, 2 white, Lonnie Hancock, Ron Brown, not that it matters now, and 2 individuals who were civil rights lawyers nominated, presented by the Black Caucus, Darby Bailey and Ira Simmons, and a candidate for mayor of Berkeley called Warren Widener. There were countless discussions which we had with all these people trying to encourage them to embrace community control police in a big way. That was more or less successful. Widener initially said he would support it. Last minute, he reneged on that. Darby Bailey was a very hard, difficult guy to work with. But in the end, they did come up with a slate of candidates. We organized around that campaign as we had organized a petition drive, door to door, as much as we could. We focused on the flat neighborhood and in the student community. We held, disseminated information at street corners. There were forums, countless meetings, countless public presentations. I have to say, one of my favorite remembrances of the community control police campaign was the wheat paste brigade. The opposition had a lot of money. They had a lot more money. We didn't have money. They could run radio ads and newspaper ads and put up all kinds of billboards and stuff. We didn't have any money. We just went door to door. And they had all these posters up which said no on the proposition, right? We couldn't put all those posters up. We didn't have the money for it. So we mimeographed a whole bunch of yeses.
Nice.
Right size, just the right size to fit over that no. And in the dark of night, we had our little brigade. We carried our ladders, we had our buckets full of wheat paste, glue, and we carried our mimeographs, and boom, 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 we get out there, ladder, and we carry up our buckets of wheat paste, and we splash on yes. And the next morning, all these things had yeses all over them, and we did that repeatedly. They were so pissed. They said they were going to sue us. And we were so pumped. I mean, this was guerrilla warfare at its best, right? I'm getting all the time here. Anyway, the outcome of that campaign was this election, and we lost. Community control police lost. It went down 1-2, really.
Wow.
And there's a lot we could talk about in that regard. The progressive candidates won, and many feel that those candidates were able to ride the wave of disorganization around community control police, which served well to help them become elected. So that was a positive. I think that despite losing, what this campaign did was it raised the issue in a big public way of police accountability, what police departments were, what they could be, what they should be. And after that, there were a number of attempts to institute some of what we had in that program. There were a number of initiatives which were voted on in Berkeley. One included that all police officers would have to live in the city. That was defeated and was subsequently actually declared unconstitutional. There was an attempt to institute the entire kind of program but on a citywide basis rather than with the 3 neighborhoods. And I think that was a problem for many people, having Berkeley divided up into 3. But out of that came the Berkeley Police Review Commission, which was created in 1973. And in its earlier incarnations, it was one of the more unique police review boards in that it had real investigative accountability built into it. So I think that too was a potential outcome of the struggle for community control of police. I want to say a few words about how we worked as a committee.